I've never actually told my family that I own a wheelchair. And to explain why, I have to go back about 6 years. I've had POTS symptoms for the last 6 years, but it wasn't until 4 years ago that I realized something was seriously wrong. At the time, I was dealing with a lot. I had PTSD from an abusive relationship, COVID had isolated me from everyone, I was having what I thought were panic attacks almost every day at school. It got so bad that I ended up leaving my high school and finishing my education virtually at home. But even after leaving school, the panic attacks never stopped. In fact, they got worse. I stopped going to stores. I stopped hanging out with people. I barely left the house. For almost 2 years, I locked myself away because I was terrified of having another episode. The weird thing was that none of it made sense. I'd have what felt like full-blown panic attacks while doing the dishes. I'd nearly black out while cooking. I'd get dizzy, shaky, nauseous, overheated, and my heart would race for absolutely no reason. If this is anxiety, why is it happening when I'm just standing in my kitchen? The only thing I really did during those years was scroll TikTok, and one day I came across videos about POTS. At first, I just related to the symptoms. The dizziness, the racing heart, the exhaustion, the feeling that you might pass out. But then I started noticing something else. The triggers. Standing, walking, being upright. Suddenly everything clicked. Maybe I wasn't having panic attacks. Maybe I was having severe POTS episodes. Because honestly, there was no reason I should have been anxious every time I cooked dinner. So I bought a Fitbit, and I started tracking my heart rate. The numbers were ridiculous. Every time I stood up, my heart rate would skyrocket. That was the moment I realized this wasn't all in my head. Something physical was happening. I started researching more. I learned that people can develop dysautonomia after severe illnesses, including COVID. I also learned that trauma can impact the nervous system. I had both around the same time. To this day, I don't know what caused it. Maybe it was one, maybe it was both. But after weeks of researching, I finally worked up the courage to ask my parents to take me to a doctor. And it did not go well. They immediately blamed my diet, my weight, my lack of exercise. They told me I was just out of shape, that my body wasn't used to standing because I had spent so much time inside. And yes, after years of being afraid to leave the house, I had gained weight. But the weight came after the symptoms. The symptoms were the reason I stopped doing things in the first place. No matter how hard I tried to explain that, nobody listened. I was called lazy. I was called fat. At one point, my mom even accused me of trying to get diagnosed so I could go on disability and avoid working. I remember leaving the house crying. There was over a foot of snow outside, and I just walked. I was so desperate to prove that this wasn't my fault, that this wasn't because I was lazy, that this wasn't because of my weight. So I started exercising. I started dieting. I lost weight, and then I asked again. One day I brought it up while sitting in a Sonic drive-thru with my dad. We got into a huge argument. He kept telling me I just needed to diet. I kept trying to explain that something was wrong. Eventually I said something I've never forgotten. I told him, I feel like you don't even care about me. I think that was the thing that finally got through to him, because after more than a month of begging, he finally agreed to take me to a doctor. My primary care doctor checked my blood pressure and heart rate. She immediately noticed changes when I stood up and referred me to a cardiologist. The cardiologist ruled out heart problems and diagnosed me with dysautonomia. But the entire time, my dad sat there telling the doctors how lazy I was, how poor my diet was, how much weight I'd gained, and honestly, the cardiologist wasn't much better. The advice I got was basically exercise, drink more water, and hope it helps. Then we left. My dad heard the words exercise more and considered the issue solved, but I didn't. Because I did exercise, I did lose weight, I did everything people told me to do, and I was still blacking out trying to wash the dishes. I was still struggling to walk through stores. I was still afraid to leave my house. So eventually I bought my first mobility aid, a cheap rollator, and I hid it. I kept it in the back of my car. I only used it with friends or on dates, but I never brought it around family. But it helped, more than exercising ever had, more than dieting ever had. For the first time, I could go places without constantly wondering if I was about to collapse. One day my dad found it. I expected him to be angry. Instead, he was mostly dismissive, like it wasn't a big deal. Later, I upgraded to a rollator transport chair combo. It helped even more. One day he came home while I was outside decorating it. I didn't have time to hide it. Again, he really didn't say much, but I still never brought it around family. Then a few months ago, something happened that honestly hurt more than any argument. My aunt found my rollator. I had to explain I had dysautonomia. She texted my dad and asked why he never told her, and my dad claimed he didn't know. The man I begged for over a month, the man who drove me to the appointments, the man who sat in the room while I got diagnosed, the man who had already seen 2 different mobility aids, didn't remember my diagnosis. I don't know if I've ever felt more dismissed than I did in that moment. Recently, I moved out, and last week I bought my first electric wheelchair. I haven't told my family, not because I'm ashamed of the wheelchair, but because I'm tired. Tired of defending myself, tired of explaining my disability, tired of hearing that I just need to try harder. They'd probably say it's an excuse not to walk, an excuse to be lazy. But here's the thing, my wheelchair didn't take my freedom away, it gave it back. Before mobility aids, I spent years trapped inside my house because I was terrified of my symptoms. Now I can go to stores, go to events, spend time outside, explore places without constantly calculating how far I am from a chair. For the first time in years, I feel free. Maybe one day I'll tell my family, maybe one day they'll understand, but right now I'm protecting my peace. Because after years of being told my symptoms weren't real, I've learned something important. I don't need everyone's approval to use the tools that improve my life. And if a mobility aid helps you live your life more fully, that's reason enough to use it.